Hey everyone, and welcome to a very special Nerd Room live stream. We're discussing the series finale of WandaVision. Myself and Carlos had the astute pleasure of welcoming back the Vigilante 1939 boys to the podcast, to the table, to discuss our journey through WandaVision. We started this out together, and we are finishing this journey together. The first episodic MCU Disney Plus show is now in the rear view mirror. Gentlemen, Daddy Bats, Nico, Zeddy, welcome back to the Nerd Room. How you boys doing?
Fantastic, man. That was a great opening, by the way. Thank you very much, man. That was really cool. Couldn't be better. Very, very excited to talk about this tonight.
We're thrilled. We're excited. And just like you said, we started it together.
Yeah.
Let's wrap it up together. Can't wait.
Yeah. This is going to be a gas.
There it is. Keep it on brand. And we've also got my good friend here, my dude, Carlos. How's it going? You're sitting there. You're ready to talk some MCU?
Yeah, man. Absolutely. I'm always stoked to hang out with these guys. Like, we could be talking about whatever. We could be, talking about the weather in Chicago versus Calgary, and I'm happy. Daryl Sutter's choice as to which city he wants to coach it. Yeah, I don't care.
This is a connection.
Yeah, I just enjoy these boys. So
and Brent Seabrook retired, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. He's a legend here, but time to move on for him.
I was just crying 20 minutes ago, man. Ridiculous.
We're gonna keep that emotional roller coaster going for you here.
Oh yeah,
because this show delivered a little bit, I think, for all of us. Both the emotional, the MCU, the capes, everything had a lot of pieces that it had to put into place as we rounded out this first series that we've seen from the MCU here. And like we talked when we began this journey together over on your podcast there, we talked about kind of the inspiration behind this and how much we were thrilled to see something different being put to the screen in the MCU world. The way that this was laid out was unlike anything we had ever seen before. And I would just say it delivered in a different way than any of us had anticipated. So since we sat down last time to discuss WandaVision, a lot has changed. We went from knowing absolutely nothing, being thrilled with the format, through a roller coaster of a season, coming out the other side now. Let me know how you guys are feeling. And we're going to full spoiler territory here. So for those watching, if you haven't seen WandaVision, take a pause. This will be up in the feed. This will be up on YouTube. Come back to it because there's a lot here that we don't want to spoil, but I want to give free reign to the guys here. So overall, Daddy Bats, Nico, we'll go to you guys first. How do you feel about how this series delivered as this first expansion piece of the MCU beyond the big screen?
You know what? I'm beyond thrilled. It far exceeded my expectations on any level. I mean, me and Nick, we sound like a broken record, but it was probably the most creative thing that the MCU has done. And I'm sad that it's over because and I'm stealing the lines from my guys. It was appointment TV. And the fact that I don't get to see Elizabeth and Paul and these guys in another episode is a little gut wrenching to me right now. It wasn't perfect, but it was close.
Yeah.
And it was so emotional to tell the story of this young woman who suffered so much grief and trauma and then manifested her anger into the biggest temper tantrum that the universe has ever seen, right? And we're along with her the whole way. And there were so many nuances in the series. I thought the supporting cast was great. I can pick on a few things in the periphery, like we're going to talk about later, that kind of bothered me, but not enough this was a complete success from beginning to end. And it accomplishes the most important thing is that I can't wait to see her further journey, Vision's further journey, Monica's further journey, and Ralph Boner.
Had to slide that one in there. Nico's reaction speaks volumes as to maybe some conversations that happened over there in the Caruso home over the last
at 3 o'clock in the morning. It's bad. You know,
we're trying to make boner jokes at 3 o'clock in the morning, father and son. It was in some ways hilarious, in some ways weird.
Yeah.
Wow. I have I have to reset. I don't know how to
just reset.
It was Well, I can't. Zednik, go ahead, please.
Oh man, I gotta agree wholeheartedly. I mean, this thing just really came by storm, right? I mean, obviously, like Falcon and Winter Soldier was supposed to be the one that came before this, and I really am almost glad that it was WandaVision that just kicked it off, because this whole thing, just with the mystery behind it, like I love me a good mystery TV show, and just when I thought I had the answer, this thing just like took me away, and I just found myself just invested into it every week, right? I mean, Lizzie Olsen and Vision were two of the most underutilized characters in the MCU. I'm sure a lot of people will agree with that. And just like this idea of it was a love story, but more importantly, it was about a battle of somebody's grief and how one really reacts to it. So I was just like impalled by like everything that they pulled off, because that sitcom should not have worked as well as it did, in my opinion. So this was as close to like a show as you can get in modern MCU for me.
Yeah, it's just so brilliant how they were able, like you said, to take characters that we likely wouldn't have got this style of expansive storytelling around their origins and what's next for both of them inside of a big screen or big film. This, to me, I fully agree with you guys. This is the way to go with some of these characters.
100%.
That you do not get the leeway with a Wanda, a Vision, even a Falcon and Winter Soldier inside of a big $200 million, $150 million movie that you're going to get here. And to be honest with you, the storytelling doesn't work on a film for a character like Wanda. Maybe going forward with what we see at the end of this, but it's quite impressive that they're able to leverage this type of storytelling now into expanding their brand beyond your big three, big four characters, now that they're taking somewhat of a back seat in the MCU. So Nico, it looks like you've calmed down.
I'm back. I'm back. So no, I mean, very to echo what the two guys here have said, I completely agree. This was, like Zeddy said, I'm so glad that this kicked off the MCU Disney Plus era, because this is the show to do it with. And what a start they had. I'm not sure. I think it will, but Falcon and Winter Soldier has some tough shoes to fill, because
it does.
The theorizing and the weekly talk. I haven't seen that since Game of Thrones. I haven't seen it since Lost when I was way younger, where not only was it appointment television, but you were talking about theories. There was speculation. There were certain characters you liked. There were so many comic book deep dives that people were doing. Like people I know, I consider a lot of people I know general audiences, and they were researching who's Nightmare, who's Mephisto, who's Agatha Harkness, and they would not have done this at any other point, because I also think this show went a little bit deeper with some of the potential content than some of the other MCU stuff has. But the thing I liked about it the most is if you really think about it, it might be one of the most relatable things the MCU ever did. And there's a subtle line from Monica that I want to get into later that I truly think if everyone who watched it thought about it, it might change the show for them forever. When she says, I would have done that too. I would have brought back my mom. There were so many lines throughout the show, but that one, I was like, in that moment, it sort of makes everything she did in a way, and it's hard to think about it, but in a way, it made it justified. It was almost like Monica was telling her it's okay.
Yeah,
it looks bad. There's repercussions. You messed up some people, because when we grieve, we do hurt people. We can hurt people around us when we're hurt, right? So, man, I give them so much respect for telling a story and focusing on that rather than the next thing, even though it sets up stuff. But they really said, here's A, here's B, and we're going to get there, and you're going to care. And now I think Wanda and Vision, but Wanda specifically, I think is one of the most developed characters in the MCU right now. I would put her up there as like in the top 3 in that regard.
Yeah, I fully agree with you. And the idea of telling a story too. They spent 8 episodes telling a story and 1 episode doing the superhero stuff.
Yep.
Which for a superhero TV show, it's pretty brave and pretty bold. For this type of storytelling. Now, Carlos, you've had some ups and downs with this, and I know that last week's episode really swayed some of your opinions. So how did this land holistically for you? Now that we can look back on some of those first episodes and say, yeah, there was a style, they were trying to do something, they were teasing a lot, but now that we got everything contextualized in front of us, how are you feeling about how this whole show landed?
I had profound thoughts, but between Eric and the Crusoes and the boner jokes, like I'm just kind of shell shocked right now. But yeah, no, there's no doubt. Like I was kind of the coolest on it as we progressed through the show, and it didn't always hit for me. But man, episode 8 totally changed my mindset, and it really elevated the quality of the product, and it caused me to do a bit of a sober second thought and assessment of the show. And in looking back, like it's probably like a top 3, top 5 for sure comic book show. So yeah, compared to stuff that you watch on HBO, like The Wire or whatever, like it wasn't that level of TV, but at the same time, when you're comparing it to other superhero TV, it's right there. Like it's shoulder to shoulder with stuff like Swamp Thing and The Watchmen and the best comic book TV that we've seen. And then particularly when you get into that 8th episode, and that 8th episode, like there was more pathos and more emotion than you get in entire MCU movies. So yeah, man, like it's full marks by the end of it for me. And yeah, I got nothing but good things to say in retrospect. Like that 8th episode, it makes the entire journey worth it once you kind of take that walk with her.
Yeah, it's definitely a special episode, the way they're able to walk through her origin in an organic way and really reflect back on the previous 7 episodes and recontextualize the whole thing, the whole series in one episode. In 35 minutes or whatever it was of TV, you now justify and understand everything that's gone on from that point forward. And like you said, it adds that emotion to it. In some of these movies, we don't get the emotion that you do in that one episode, but you need the foundation of the previous 7 to fully understand and fully consume what they're putting in front of you. And so, yeah, I fully agree with everything that you guys are saying, you know, from the first chat that we had about this and my excitement around that. You know, I'm the MCU guy. I kind of love everything they put in front of me, but I do have the ability to step back and say, you know, what is good relative to other things, like Carlos put it too. And this, again, it stands top tier. This is masterclass storytelling. And I love the new format for the MCU, and I'm excited for it. And I agree with you guys that Falcon and Winter Soldier has some shoes to fill.
Big shoes.
And so, and it's going to be more of a traditional MCU style of storytelling.
Yeah.
As opposed to this, which is, I think, quite unique and special.
Yeah, I think it'll be more of that grounded take.
Yeah.
More realistic. And whether it could touch this or not, but I think it'll be fine. I think it's going to
I agree.
accomplish exactly what it needs to do. So
yeah, I think Falcon and Winter Soldier is safe. The ones that I kind of worry about how people will view them with how high WandaVision set the bar is Black Widow and Loki. For whatever reason, the spider sense is tingling, and I'm like, I don't know about that one. Like, even our co-host Troy, like, he was all in with Loki, but you're kind of done with him. By the time you get to Endgame, it's like, yeah, dude, like, we'll put you to bed. So
it feels like a bit of a what if almost. I agree what they're going to do with him. And I think we'll touch on some of that towards the end about our hype level coming out of this. But I want to talk to you guys about expectations before we get into any discussion of episode 9 here. I want to talk about fan expectations. A few weeks ago, episode 8 or 7, there was a lot of conjecture. There's a lot of discussion about who is this freaking engineer.
Oh God!
And myself, I partaked in that. I partaked in the theory crafting and having fun with it. But I think some of us have the ability to let some of that go and let that fan theory be fun in the moment. But when the story is delivered to us, accept that and move on. Look, we had characters, Reed Richards, Blue Marvel, the X-Men in its entirety, both in the MCU and the Fox, Mephisto, Hank McCoy, Nightmare, Doctor Strange, Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland threw his name into the hat at one point. All these names were mentioned throughout the duration of this show. And that put this to not only a different level within the Twitter sphere and in the chat around that and the theories going on. But when some of those episodes landed and we didn't see the engineer, it wasn't Reed Richards. I never thought it was going to be Reed Richards, but it wasn't Reed Richards. It wasn't a Fantastic Four. It wasn't a backdoor pilot to the X-Men. There was some people that were let down or felt let down by that. Even the Pietro, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
It was kind of tossed aside and put in front of us in a certain aspect.
Yeah, that was a bit of a boner. So
there it is.
It's gone. It's gone. So I know Nico's not going to be able to take this right away just because of that. So I'm going to throw it to Zeddy here. What's your thoughts on expectations and how people maybe need to readjust a little bit, or how we as a community need to readjust a little bit with this type of storytelling, the episodic weekly, where we have weeks between or a week between episode drops. And it's a little different than the film universe where we have maybe a year or a month, but we kind of forget about it after a little bit. This is constantly on the tip of the tongue. By the time you're done theory crafting, it's time for the next episode. I like the episodic layout, but I think it's a double-edged sword because it gives us a lot of time to throw stuff around. And we're spending 6+ hours with these characters now. So Zeddy, what are your thoughts on expectations going forward?
Yeah, so I actually don't really fault Marvel for this at all, because I think this is the product of what happens when you have a full-blown universe that you have all these characters kind of rolling around in, and then, you know, on the cinematic side, you kind of have all these different characters popping in each other's movies. So I think from a fan perspective, you know, they kind of expect this to happen. So when they don't get it, it's almost like wait, where's Spider-Man at? Wait, where's so-and-so? So I just think that it was like they didn't really see it coming, which I was guilty of it too. I was on Twitter. I was like, oh man, Toby's gonna pop up in like the last 30 seconds of episode 9. Yeah, it's pizza time. You know it. But then again, you know, it's like the more high expectations we set, it's almost like the more down that we're gonna be if it doesn't happen. So in the end, we're kind of a victim of our own hype in a way, because I mean, there was really only one person that I was expecting to see that I thought theoretically made the most sense out of anybody, and that was Doctor Strange. So. Which technically he was there, he just wasn't there physically. So I would argue, but yeah, I know it's hard, but for what it's worth, there's always going to be expectation.
Yeah,
and anyways, yeah,
you tempered some of my expectations in the past here, and you know how much I love to build a universe in my head. So going forward, how does and should Marvel try to skew this towards lowering expectations? There's a couple of tweets that were put out there by some of the creatives saying, you know, don't get too excited about X, Y, and Z and tempering expectations. I agree with Zeddy here that I think they just let it go, right? It's talked about from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and then you get to Wednesday and it's like, okay, I'm waiting for WandaVision because X, Y, and Z. So you spend one day a week where people aren't talking about it. Do they need to temper those expectations or just let the fan base go?
Yeah, I don't know that it's something they actively have to do, but at the same time, like some of the comments about being able to act against somebody that they've always dreamed about acting against, and the big one, like, and I actively saw it because I wasn't the theory crafting guy, and I'm typically not, but I think we were all together. And when she made that Luke Skywalker cameo comparison, like y'all went nuts. It was crazy. And I was like, I don't know what it could be, but yeah, maybe Toby, but whatever. We'll see what happens. But I think that kind of started it, and then the fans went nuts. And I do think it was prudent on the part of the showrunners to kind of temper that in advance of today's episode, because even in the face of them saying like people might be disappointed, and to get people to kind of put their expectations in check, like there was a lot of shade thrown at the lack of headcanon that came to fruition today. But yeah, I don't know. I think as long as they don't do things to maybe get people's expectations up, and not on the production side of things, but just as long as there's not hints and teases like the two leads made in this case, I think the subsequent shows will be totally fine, right? Yeah. And people be happy to let it play out, because I think once they kind of planted the seeds to craft theories, then it just went wild. And yeah,
this show in particular, I think, found itself in a special space where it left so many threads every week dangling for us. And I think as a community too, we pay attention to like every single word. Like when that word was, oh, I have an engineer friend, and then it was mentioned the next week, we're like, okay, something's coming. And and when it didn't, it's fine. To me, I was like, yeah. And then that was where I had my moments, my aha moment, and put myself in my chair and said, look, I can't be doing this every single week. I can have fun with it, but I can't set myself. Because I remember sitting with my wife and saying, I don't know what I'm more excited about, the episode or the reveal of the engineer. And right there, I was like, ooh, that probably isn't good.
Right.
Yeah. The other thing that probably didn't help is that this was the first MCU thing that we've had after over a year, right?
Yeah.
So anticipation and everybody's chomping at the bit, and it's nuts.
And ultimately, I think it's good for the brand of Marvel and the MCU, bringing that sort of the discussion. But Nick and Nico, did you guys find yourself ever disappointed with anything, or the lack of, say, an inclusion of someone like Mephisto, Nightmare, Doctor Strange?
Yeah, I was telling him early, I don't know if some of this was intentional or not intentional, but I think you have to, going forward, they have to control the actors to even saying the littlest things. So for me, I'll just go to that episode when the truck is heading to the area where the engineer is. I was sitting here with my son, and my heart was really beating.
I was sweating.
Okay. And I think if you listen to our podcast, I was guilty of it, right? And when I saw that it wasn't anybody really in particular, and my son called it and said it was a scrawl, that it was, we'll talk about that later. Yeah. But I got out of the scene for a moment, and I didn't appreciate Monica's attempt to get into the hexagon, and it kind of fell flat for me. But the show was so good that I could separate it and say to myself, what I'm watching is such quality. It's so character driven and so emotional that I was able to take that stuff away from it.
Yeah.
But I do say to you guys, the first week or 2 weeks it was out, I think it didn't land well for a lot of people with the sitcom. And I'm not sure that Kevin Feige or maybe some of that stuff was a little intentional to get people interested into it. And then when they did get interested to it, you couldn't help but hang on to it because it was so good. But there is a large group that did hang on to everything they said. And, if you're disappointed because you didn't get that, I understand it. It doesn't take away from the core story. But I'm not here to criticize people that went that way, that believed and felt like they needed, because that's kind of what Marvel does do. And they didn't do it here. And that's to their credit that they didn't do it. So I fell into the trap. I was able to climb myself out. I do have a therapist here that I watch it with that would scold me and remind me that that's really not what it's about, Dad. You like the show. You love the show. Get yourself out of that. So
that's not the words I use, but
I
think it's something like that. It's some much more aggressive. I'm just kidding. So what's funny about this question, and I'm kind of glad that I went last, because I think all of you are right, and that all of that is valid. So I do think it could have been a little sprinkled to generate hype. I would put actors in check. I also thought it was uncontrollable, thought it was inevitable. It was the first MCU thing, but I'm going to blame something. I'm going to blame The Mandalorian. I'm blaming The Mandalorian because even if like him and I were going, it would make sense. It would have to be Luke, right? I won't believe anyone who said they thought Luke was going to show up.
No.
Yeah,
when Luke showed up and we were with you guys and we said, this means for Star Wars, at least, everything's on the table, right? Every single thing, because he, of all the untouchable Star Wars characters, he was one. He was the number one guy. So then like WandaVision's fun, right? And yes, the actors start teasing, which I'm with you all. I think, I don't know. At the same time, like, I don't know if Elizabeth Olsen like knows or cares about the Luke Skywalker cameo. So she was just like, yeah, it's going to be like that one.
Yeah, right.
You know what I mean? But at the same time, watching WandaVision, when someone said it might be Reed Richards, and I'm like, no, I'm also like, yeah, man, but we got Luke Skywalker CGI'd. I mean, what can they do? Like, what if they just filmed it last week and they put him in somehow. I'm like,
Yeah.
so, but I also think we have our answer already. I think so many people were tempered by WandaVision that they're going to be more cautious in the future. Like, I think like he, like 3 times and it's fine.
It's okay.
3 different scenes last night. Something happens on screen and he turns to me and goes, Strange? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't think so. And he's like, oh, Strange here? And I'm like, I don't know, man. I don't know.
I was looking for Strange.
I was too, man. It's
And I'm like,
scene,
listen,
Tim.
but
where was he? He's the Sorcerer Supreme.
But like, what's funny is like,
Wand. Couldn't they at least do Wand?
But what's funny, and then I'll wrap up here because I don't want to ramble. For some reason, you couldn't like. So I removed it and was fine, and I'm here to this day fine. But like, when it cuts to the scene where it shows all the ruins, and like Agatha's trying to do her powers, and it starts to slowly pan, I'm like, is Cumberbatch behind her? Like, come on, man! And he's like holding her. And I'm like, I can't.
Just got his hand on his shoulder.
Yeah,
I can't fight it. Oh,
even
there were multiple moments in this
moment where he
I was like, strange. Even the last end credit scene, I was like, okay, this is where he is.
He's in the cabin. He's in the cabin, Tim. He's making the tea.
Yeah,
he's brewing the tea.
I was right there with you. But I think the big takeaway here, and I think it's a great and a very astute observation on your part, Nico, about the Mandalorian, because you have to rewind that too. Not only we get Luke, it's like Ahsoka, Bo-Katan, Boba Fett. You know, it's just like this parade of cameos that put you on the hot seat, or put that show on the hot seat with regards to who can they include. Because you look at Endgame, you look at anything that they've done, there's no limitations. You know, you go to early phase 2 and it's like, okay, we're going to separate everyone out. But post Winter Soldier, it's like anyone could be in any movie. We can pull Ruffalo in for 10 days. We can pull Hemsworth, whomever. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
Right. And so like the cuffs were off there. And I like that observation around the Mandalorian, because it was a literal parade of cameos through that whole season, and high-end cameos.
Yeah, like the biggest people ever.
Yeah. So, I think you're right too, that the tempering of the fan base now with the end of WandaVision and all that going to Falcon Winter Soldier, let's not expect Evans in every episode, right? Like he's not coming.
I don't know, man. I still might do it.
maybe we'll get Let's Go's Chris Evans in there. He'll pop up and we'll get there he is.
I would love if he showed up in there. Chris Evans.
There is one person I'm expecting though in the Winter Soldier, a young lady, but we'll talk about that later.
I can't wait.
From a movie that hasn't come out yet. Because she was rumored to be on
Florence
the set.
Pugh?
Yep. Florence
Pugh. that would make sense.
I would be really disappointed if we don't see her, having not saw her yet in Black Widow.
It's in my head.
Which is weird.
It's there. It's planted.
It's in my head.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to episode 9. The final, it was called the series finale on Disney Plus. My wife pointed out when I said, okay, the season finale. She said, nope, series finale. And so this is putting basically a bookend to her story in this format. WandaVision has a future in the MCU, but it doesn't exactly look like it's going to be on Disney Plus in the same style of episode. You can't really replicate this in any way. But coming into episode 9, we've gone through our feelings and how we felt the build was and the execution and everything going on with the show. But let's focus on this episode in particular. They had a lot to do for this concluding chapter of this story. They had to usher these characters to a satisfying conclusion. I think that's something that I want to talk about too, is the ability to conclude a TV series and move on into the big screen. You have to bring these characters to a close. You can't leave everything on a massive cliffhanger. I'm going to put that into the universe there. But of course, they also have their next story.
Nice one.
Was that subtle enough for everyone?
Like, that would be just stupid.
Kevin Carlos and I immediately caught that. Carlos and I caught that at the same time.
But these stories these characters have other stories to be told in the MCU. And so they also have to be left in a way where it's open enough that we can see these characters pop up, like Wanda in the Multiverse of Madness. Vision, I'm not sure where he shot off to, but he will be back in some way. But that's the character I want to start off with here. We're going to kind of we'll walk through the plot a little bit, walk through some of the characters, some of the big moments. But let's start with Vision here. We ended episode 8 with a massive an absolutely massive end credit scene, and the reveal of the White Vision, the sword White Vision, which for all of us comic fans, that popped us all big time. What are we going to see from this character? Now, as he walks into the Hex and he has this inevitable battle with the Hex version or the materialized version of Vision, the Vision that we know from this show, but not the true Vision. And we have kind of a bit of a punchy here. But to be honest with you, I found that Vision himself, like that small arc, took a bit of a back seat and kind of played out in the sky above us and didn't really get, there's some really close or touching moments in there with Vision and himself. But I found myself lacking just a little bit. If I had to criticize this episode a bit, it's Vision. He didn't get the pure, I guess, detailed storytelling that Wanda got. Yes, it was her show, but Vision's also in the title and he's had a big part to play here. So Zeddy, what are your thoughts here on Vision, both White Vision, Old Vision, New Vision, and where this character could go in the future?
Wanda's Vision.
Yeah, Wanda's Vision.
Mr. Clean Vision. I like that one. That's one I haven't seen before. So I'm kind of with you, Tim. I thought the Vision parts in the episode were kind of the weakest parts for me. Now, I dug the whole dialogue between them. Like I thought that was like one of the most emotional beats of like this Westview Vision trying to get through the other Vision, and I dug like how he was the one, because it was essentially like it was the manifestation of Wanda that ultimately like jugged Vision's memory back.
Yeah,
in a sense, right? Because that's Westview Vision. He's not actually real. He's an essence of Wanda, almost essentially. A memory of Wanda. So that part I actually like. That part hit me. Like that part I got. Like that was awesome. My gripe was more so what happened after the fact. So kind of like you just said, Tim, where it's like, so Vision's memory gets restored, and then he almost just like flies away, and he's like nowhere to be seen. And then I thought it was like odd that like Westview Vision wouldn't mention that to Wanda at all. But and I get it. Like there were other things going on. The inevitable goodbye was happening, but like from a story like standpoint, like what was going on in my head, I was like, so is Westview Vision gonna like tell Wanda that, hey, so I jugged his memory back and I'm not really gone forever, but like I get it. Like that's again, that's expectation, like we just talked about. So that's like headcanon. But for what it's worth, I thought like the ending scene between them was just like probably the most like gut-wrenching scene in the MCU that we've seen yet. And to think that may not be the last that we see of them either. So yeah,
it's that moment that they have is undercut a little bit by you thinking in the back of your head, wait, I thought this other Vision, this new White Vision, has the memories of the old Vision, so what's going on here? And letting that memory fade, I think, is an important step for Wanda in the arc of all of this, is that she basically has to take it all back, because in the absence of that, I don't think you get a solid conclusion to Wanda's story, but you still have this dangling in the background. Well, what about this guy? Nico, what did you guys think about Vision and how they close this character out and how they utilize the White Vision to give us some of that superhero face-to-face, the stuff that we're looking for, the action that wasn't at all a focus in the show?
Yeah, so for me, the biggest question I had going into it, one of the biggest ones, was what are they going to do with the Vision? I actually, in my head, didn't think any of them were going to make it out. I thought they were going to destroy each other. The dialogue that he has with him about the ship was so profound and beautiful. And the fact that you have this White Vision who's only programmed has one mission, and he's able to process that. And then, of course, the Westview Vision focuses on him and he lets him see everything, all of his memories. So for me, I am elated that we're going to see the Vision again.
Yeah.
It was enough for me. I agree with you guys. They could have done a little bit more, but in my mind, it was one of the things I walked out of the episode saying, like, at some point they're going to reconvene. They're going to have their moment together again, and that there will be a Vision going forward in the MCU, because I didn't think that.
Yeah, the totally on board with that, 100%. I chalked it up to the dialogue between them was incredible and was my third favorite thing in the episode. But because I count. I will say I think the action stuff, as cool as it was a little quick, and that's when I went, oh, they fell into the traditional season finale grope where there's like trope. Excuse me. Where like they set it up and then it happens and it's kind of quick and then it's sort of gone and it has a cool resolution, but you're like, okay, that was sort of fast. I will say, because I was talking to Zeddy about this earlier, because he brought up a good point. Like, why didn't he then come back? Why did he leave? I think, and this is a big guess and a big like giving the writers maybe more credit than like I'm overselling them. But with some of their other stuff on the show, I don't think I could oversell them enough. What a writing team they had. Shout out to them. I think maybe he knew it's going to take him time to come back.
Sure.
And I think Westview Vision like knew he's got to go. And I think Westview Vision at that point knows he's going to be gone because Wanda's got to get out of this thing. And when this thing goes, I go. So it's almost like, go, you'll come back. Maybe you'll find her. And I'm going to go watch her and I'll do the last stand with her and whatever happens, happens. So, and maybe when he's about to go, he thinks that she needs to be by herself. That was me, but it's hard to not think if he gets the memories and was seeing them all, why doesn't White Vision go there? But
there's an entire story to be told there again. Too, with Vision.
Exactly.
And this is potentially the cliffhanger that they leave you with outside of the two mid-credit scenes, which are intentionally there for that purpose. No, Carlos, Bettany was your guy through most of this.
Absolutely.
Did he deliver in this with playing against this actor that he had been wanting to act against for his whole career?
Yeah, man. Like, this was by far my favorite part of this episode. Like, this episode was a bit of a step back for me from the height that we reached with episode 8. But yeah, like, I think the seeds, and one of my favorite scenes of the show was in episode 7. And ironically, it had the nails on a chalkboard Darcy in it when they're in the van and he's kind of going through the steps as to what his reality is and what he's constituted of. And then you have the conversation that he has with the new Vision, the Ship of Theseus Vision, or in that, what is he, right? And he's talking about the pieces of him that have been replaced. And he kind of has that conversation where he's like, you ultimately will be made of me, but you will not be, just as I'm not the original Vision. And he even kind of says that the original Vision was a construct as well. So yeah, it's amazing. And I think more than anything else, like, this sets up where they're going to take these two characters going forward, because as much as people know Wanda and Vision together, there's almost enough, like, as much time of the two of them apart and opposed to each other, where one is pining for the other and the other half is like, no, I want nothing to do with this because it's unhealthy, and you are not the Vision or Wanda that I know, or you're not right in the head, and you need to get to where you need to be before we can be together. So I think it sets up some really interesting things going forward. And if they have like grand scale conflicts with each other, or even small conflicts with each other, and yeah, I'm here for it. Like, I think it's great. And yeah, Eric, I love you, but Darcy is terrible. So
she was better in this than she was in Thor: The Dark World. I can say that with the utmost certainty.
Yeah, I don't know. No.
It's this is why I love podcasting. This is why I love having these conversations, because I already feel different after hearing you guys talk for the last 3 minutes about the Vision arc than I did when I started this piece of the conversation.
It's the beauty of it.
What triggered me here was when Carlos said, about them having stories apart. And you find in sitcoms themselves, if you're constantly writing in circles with two characters, a love interest usually in particular, that you get to a ground where it's like, we can't do anything more with these characters together. We have to separate them, and
Take
they
them
have to
apart.
go on their own journeys, and they have the time apart. Because if we kept going to every Avenger film or with Wanda and Vision, they're arguably two of the most powerful Avengers. And then what do you do with these characters? You've had their send-offs in various ways, or their separations, or their goodbyes. And yes, they will come back together, but it's going to be different because these characters have evolved.
Yep.
And I really, really like this conversation for that exact thing. Is now I have a completely different picture in my head here of what they're going to do in the future. And we didn't need that happy ending. We kind of got that happy ending with the two of them, with them saying goodbye, but it's about what's next and setting these characters up for success in the future in the MCU. So brilliant work, guys. Brilliant work. Wow.
So what you're saying is you're not going to have the White Vision Marvel Legend with the Scarlet Witch Marvel Legend on your shelf. You're going to have them separate from each other.
Yeah, they're gonna be in different parts, man. Mine are chronologically through the movie order too.
There you
So
go.
I gotta find a place to put WandaVision now beside Endgame here. Now, before we get to two of our main characters, the witches in this particular episode or the series, let's talk about some of the periphery characters here. And I want to throw this one out there because I'm going to wait on this. I want to throw a Pietro, and I'm going to go straight to my dudes Nico and Nick here because I got to hear some of this.
Yeah.
The whole X-Men thing that was really lit on fire a couple episodes back with Evan Peters, almost called him Chris Evans. Evan Peters showing up on the doorstep. It blew a lot of this theory crafting, and that's what really, I think, revved it up, was his presence. And I'm happy to say that I always sat on the side that this has nothing to do with Fox X-Men. This has nothing to do with multiverse or anything like that. And we get, I think, a solid and almost comical conclusion to Pietro in this. With the Ralph Boner reveal and the reveal that he's been controlled via this necklace through Agatha the whole time. He's actually the husband that she's been referring to and kind of having him penned up here until he's ready to do his work. So the tease here and the giant wink that the writers threw at this, that's just masterclass writing. It is a big old wink. Did that land for you guys? No,
not for me, because here's the situation. Like I generally found him to be so engaging in the couple episodes he was in the chemistry that he had with Wanda. Now, I will say this. I didn't necessarily have a problem. I don't have a problem with it not being the Fox Quicksilver.
Mm-hmm.
I would have preferred that he might have been one from another multiverse because, as Kevin Feige said, this sets up the other movies. So I had that in my mind. Then it became pretty clear to me that he wasn't going to be that. And I was still trying to figure out how can they still keep him in the MCU, because I think his personality and the way he played the role fits.
Oh, yeah, it's great.
Forward. He should be a part of the Avengers, of S.W.O.R.D. or whatever's going forward. So I finally said to myself, look, going into the last episode, he's probably nobody. That's fine. I had a really bad time with how they did it with him, with the joke. I thought it was cringeworthy, in poor taste, disrespectful. It just didn't land for me.
It was almost as big of a wink as his presence.
It was such a misdirect. My son met it. That's fine. I get it, but I don't know why. I think they're going to look back at this, because I always look at this season finales, series finales, the writers, and they'll always, whether it be Lost or some other show, they'll always say a couple things they wish they could have changed. I would have preferred that when he comes to, maybe he's just like, where am I? What happened? And Monica's like, you're going to be okay. Don't worry. But they played him like such a dolt. And I just didn't like it. I'm sorry. It didn't ruin the episode for me. And everything was also so great. And if we never see him again, we never see him again. It's not going to stop me from delving deep into the future of these characters and what's coming. But I didn't think it was good.
See, when they first cast him, because that was like a thing, like people kind of knew he was doing it
early,
like when they were doing production. I remember some of like the not trades, but some of like the more credible scoopers were like, oh yeah, he's in WandaVision, and that's why he's being asked about it on the Apocalypse, or not Apocalypse, Dark Phoenix press tour. So I originally thought going into the show, he's the meta casting, right? Mm-hmm. It's going to be, oh, he's Quicksilver. We couldn't get Aaron Taylor Johnson. You like this guy better. You're going to like when he's in there. It's going to be funny. And then he's going to be no one, which I was fine with. He was so good in episode 6 that I'm like, I want this guy to never leave, right? Mm-hmm. Like I want him to stay on the show. But so Tim, I was with you. I said, I would not that I wouldn't prefer, but I hope he's not the Fox one, because then the biggest writing hole is, well, why don't you just bring all of them over then? And why would he stay and why would he not go back? Because he could just say anytime I have like the strongest people in our world that are going to come here and help you guys. So I'm like, that's not what they're going to do. And then I'm like, maybe he's a Quicksilver from a different multiverse. And then the way episode 8 went, I'm like, I don't think they're going to do I don't think the multiverse is a thing yet. Because then I started going, well, when they announced this, there was still some Scott Derrickson was still attached to Doctor Strange 2. That went south. And then Spider-Man 3, this concept, I'm telling you, was not even a thing yet. It was going to be Peter on the Run, and that's what that movie 100%. Was. Yeah. And that's why John Watts is directing Fantastic Four, because the real director of Spider-Man 3 is Sam Raimi. He's doing the both at the same time. I'm serious. Like, you guys think I'm kidding? I'm serious. So when it happened, I went into the episode going, he's the metacasting. I'm fine with all of it. I just don't like the joke. I don't like the joke because you're right, Tim. It's masterclass writing of a misdirect. And I went, they got me. Ralph Boner. I'm like, God.
Yeah, I will hand you that. Like, I love
that doesn't offend me. It wasn't offensive to me. I just wanted more for the character. I would have loved for him just to had a moment like, I don't know what happened. And Monica, who was great. We'll talk about her. Like, you're okay. It's going to be okay. That's all. It was just like, it was Josh Whedon, Justice League Friends. It was Iron Man 3, the Mandarin to me. It just was weird.
The other thing I'll say real quick is you said that they're going to look back. I think they're going to look back in maybe a different way I think they got a little too cute with it because just like we said, just the expectation, right? When they could have told us when they cast him, he's not going to be anyone. It is going to be a meta casting. People saw him as Quicksilver there, and now he's Quicksilver here. And I think he's him. And I can't unsee it because he's so damn good. You know what I mean? So maybe he really is him. So I think it's one of the rare things Kevin Feige will look back on and say, we got too cute. But then how could you not use him? It's Pietro. You needed a Pietro. So it was like
it's funny because looking at the comments here, there's very few people that are sitting on my side of this one. I get Eric, but Ian Emmett, Chris, all these guys are looking at this as being not landing for them. And I don't know if it's the character itself, the X-Men, the big wink on that end of things, or if it's the way that you're almost taken out. I kind of chuckled at it and was like, it's kind of weird just calling him Ralph Boner. Like it just seemed odd to throw it out there. But what side of this discussion do you sit on, Zeddy?
Yeah, so I'm kind of like with everybody here, where it's like I gotta agree with my girl Monica in the episode where she was like, Ralph Boner? like that's almost the way it kind of landed for me, where it was like of course, right? Like, so because I mean, if anybody was gonna cross over, I did think that it was Evan Peters Quicksilver. I just dug the dynamic that he had with Wanda too, and I kind of liked it because it's not like we were really ever attached to Aaron Taylor Johnson's Quicksilver.
Whoa, speak for yourself.
I mean,
for yourself, bro.
I kind
of like my friends at the club. They play best disco music all Europe.
Hey,
bro.
man, you want to dance with your girl?
Yeah, you want to dance with her? Look how sexy she is.
I just want the rest of the podcast to be him talking like that.
Holding a bottle of Grey Goose.
Right. Bottle service.
Oh God.
Yeah.
that's funny. I
Bobby
can't.
bottle service.
The best vodka, only best vodka
Yeah.
for me and my
Oh,
girls.
yeah, exactly. They do make good vodka there.
I'll switch to Borat then. Very nice.
Yeah.
WandaVision,
Yeah.
great success.
Sorry,
Kill
Zeddy.
Zeddy, no. Go ahead, because Zeddy was
Finish,
going.
Zeddy,
was
come on.
going, Zeddy was
I
going.
already lost my train of thought. I can't even follow that up.
Save it. Come on.
Go ahead.
Come on,
You got
man.
it. You
No,
got it. Come on.
I lost my
Come
train
on.
of thought. That's too
Come on.
good.
You're contrasting two different Pietros. We've got a non-Pietro or Fietro, and we've got Aaron Taylor, your European bro. For those that don't know, maybe expand on that a little bit, because that out of context.
Can someone pull up a picture of a Euro bro just so I can see?
Yeah, no, just a couple episodes of the Nerd Room ago, I was talking about my love of the Eurobro Aaron Taylor Johnson version of Quicksilver, because we all know that guy.
We know.
He's shouldered each and every one of us at the club at some point of time, right? And maybe like wanted to start some beef, and then becomes your best friend if he sees your crew, or starts intimidating you, moving in on your girl.
I gotta tell you one quick story, Carlos. I was in the entertainment business for a long time, and I owned a nightclub, a live venue. And I got to tell you, man, there was this one guy that would come in, hit the bill, and every night he had 15 problems during the course of the night.
Yeah.
But he was a good spender. He was a great customer. He was a regular for years. But he would always go up to my guys and invariably have a problem with everyone in the club at some point.
But it's always
like,
I didn't do anything.
You got to pick him out. There's going to be a problem. Would you be like, oh, okay, yeah, it'll be all right. Go have another drink or whatever. Walking to the bath. I mean, all night long, he pointed out people that he had a problem with. And that is Pietro.
What was it?
There we go, right? How many
was that
times did he
Roman.
show up with the Kappa tracksuit?
Oh, several times during the weekdays.
No, I gotta show you guys.
That
a
was his
picture.
modus operandi.
I gotta show you guys a picture. My dad was rocking a full black Adidas tracksuit like last week, and I wanted to share it. And he was like Soprano. It was beautiful.
It's going to become my favorite tangent ever on a podcast.
His cane and his chest hair was on full display. It was hilarious.
It's very comfortable to watch WandaVision in that attire.
Amazing.
You know what I mean?
Sponsored.
Amazing. I think that needs to be the show art for this episode.
It's just tracksuit.
I need that photo.
But anyway,
how do we- oh man,
Tim, we've all been shouldered by a Pietro several times.
I don't
I
even
don't
know
know
where
how to
this-
follow that one up.
Where are we? I don't even know where we are.
Where are we?
I think the jury is still out on whether or not this was a good decision. But I will say, I that GIF of Agatha Harkness, that big wink,
Oh god.
that to me, that explains this entire Pietro
It does.
fiasco,
Yeah.
if you want to call it that. But Zeddy, I gotta come back to you here for a second. Let's talk about Monica. You mentioned her. She had a moment with Pietro, but she in herself, after having a big origin story reveal in episode 7, was it? Episode 8? Episode 7. She kind of took a back seat in the subsequent episodes, episode 8 and 9. They refocused on Wanda, which I think is a good decision. And she played a very, very minor part going forward in WandaVision through the penultimate and the final episode here. So we get a little display of her power set. And we're going to talk about this a little later, the end credit and what we think it means. But Monica Rambeau, she became a real focal point for a while. And like I said, died off a little bit. Do you think that was the right decision to build that character up and have her take a back seat and fire into Captain Marvel 2? Or would you have preferred her to play a larger role in the finale here?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, because while I do think that it was important to kind of set her up to have this larger role kind of in Captain Marvel 2 and maybe even beyond, I totally see her like having this like moral compass role in the MCU, just because as a character throughout the show, she just made everything feel so grounded to me. It's almost like when she wasn't on screen, I was almost taken out of it a little bit, because I was like, I want more Monica Rambeau. Like she's just incredible. Like what she was doing with Wanda, I thought was great. Where she really believed in Wanda, and I love that now they're really always connected in a way. So on a sense, I did kind of like get taken aback that Monica wasn't more involved with helping out Wanda. But I did kind of really dig that little discourse that they had kind of at the end where it's like it's not a goodbye, but it's like a see you down the road kind of type thing a little bit. So yeah, that was I was a little actually Monica was probably the part that I was the most let down. Yeah.
Yeah, Carlos, what about you? We both felt that Monica made the sword stuff a little bit more digestible, the sword stuff outside of the hex and that we felt at times it was very much Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.-esque the way that it was being portrayed. And I found that Monica and Jimmy Woo, that nice tandem, that tag team, I think for me, it did a lot. It delivered a lot. And Monica, I think they took the character to a point where she could take off into Captain Marvel 2. Hype level for Captain Marvel 2 now that knowing Monica's origin and the fact that she's going to be a bigger part of this. Change your hype level because I know you're a big fan of Captain Marvel.
Yeah. I was. Yeah. In fact, I was going to fly to New York and watch Captain Marvel 2 with Eric because that's how much I love the first one. He's the only other guy that's on the same level. But she's her presence and her involvement in Captain Marvel 2 has me from I'll wait till Disney Plus to got to be their opening night kind of thing because she was phenomenal in this. I think they kind of lost their way a little bit with her character. Not that they gave Tiana anything weird to do or that she didn't act any scenes well, but it's the thing for me was her motivation to help Wanda was always kind of weird because she was willing to die for this woman, but they never really delved into why. They kind of give you this throwaway as to, well, I would do anything to save my mother too. But it's like, well, you are a member of a government agency and you conceivably, and your mother certainly did, sign up to protect the citizens of the United States. So how can you abide by one person holding a couple thousand of them hostage and like truly hostage? So it was kind of weird how invested she was into saving Wanda. Whereas I don't know. And that might've been some of the fallout of setting up the sword bad guy or the director of sword as to being a bad guy, which was also kind of weird because it's like, well, why would the FBI arrest this guy if he's been tasked with rescuing the citizens of Westview, which conceivably to me would mean like taking out Wanda would be okay. Right. So that whole thing kind of played out weird, and it might be a testament to how well Tiana Paris played Monica Rambeau that you kind of forgot about that because she made the character so compelling. So yeah, man, I'm excited to see more of her. I do think that the actress transcended what they gave her to work with in the show because it kind of got lost in the weeds for me. So
well, and it's interesting too because walking into this, we all knew who she was playing. But I didn't expect the amount of ties and development of that character and a pseudo prelude to Captain Marvel 2 built into this. It doesn't feel like they're kind of one and the same. WandaVision, the story they're telling there and what they're doing there. And I think most of it lands for me. And I think it kind of gives a nice baseline for that character. They don't have to spend 15 minutes in a Captain Marvel 2 explaining an origin and all that. You can kind of hit the ground running a bit with that character, assuming most people see WandaVision going into this. So Caruso Bros, you guys seem to be quite amped up now for Captain Marvel 2 because of the work they do in this show with Monica Rambeau and her. And I think at this point, let's get into that post-credit because it's focused in and around Monica, and I want to give you the dues where they are due, and that is to Nico for calling the Skrulls and having some inclusion in this show, which I don't think was on anyone's radar.
Yeah, thank you. It was like my 8th guess, so I feel like I will take credit. But
not Reed Richards, it's not Hank McCoy.
At that point, I was through so many guesses that it was inevitable that one was going to stick. No, so just a quick thing on that is you watched Captain Marvel for the first time prior to episode 7.
Yep.
And so we watched WandaVision at 2 a.m, and then we were recording our podcast Saturday, and I I forgot because I hadn't seen it since the theater at that point, which was 2 Marches ago, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot of dialogue with young Monica in that movie. She sort of, it's not like she does a lot, but she's a part of a lot. And then we rewatched the episode before the podcast, and as she's going through the hex, they're replaying the scenes of when she's talking to Carol, like she's Lieutenant Trouble and she's the toughest kid, and then you hear Talos's voice, and I was like, who would she call the Skrulls? She's known them her whole life.
Yeah.
And then Sword at the end of Far From Home, he's Fury. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be the Skrulls. All those people were Skrulls, because then she says her mother would be proud, and her mother probably started Sword with the Skrulls because she helped find them a new Earth or a new home with Bree. So I'm like, oh, it's gonna be a Skrull, and then it was, and I was kind of like, awesome, but also like, damn it, but also like awesome. But no, I'm really hyped for Captain Marvel 2, because it's no secret I do not care for that film. He doesn't either. Not that we always agree, but I knew when I showed him it. There's worse ways to spend 2 hours, but should have showed him something else probably. Her being in there, I think is going to elevate that movie a lot, because I thought, just like you both said, she transcended what they gave her to do. And I almost wasn't bothered by what happened with her, because the minute I was halfway through the episode and I went, okay, so her sole purpose in here is to be in Captain Marvel 2. Like, that was the thing they did to set up. And I said, okay. And they did a really nice job the first half of like making it work.
Felt organic.
Yeah, it was so organic. And I think that's credit to Taylor and Paris as well. Then the finale happens and you're like, oh, so she was in here for that post-credit scene. But I want to give credit where it's due. She saves the kids.
Because Hayward's a terrible
she
shot.
saved the kids from being shot.
What a bad shot he was.
Yeah, man, he's awful. But
the kids are over here and over here. He shoots right at her.
Shout out to Tommy. And
he also unloaded a clip into a woman standing in front of him and two kids.
Exactly.
Yeah, no one's talking about that. Hold on.
And then looked at his gun being like, what's wrong with my gun?
Like,
just kept
come on,
shooting,
man. Like,
man. But she saved the kids.
yeah.
Thank you, Monica, for saving the kids, because it's all for the children.
Kids saved her.
Yeah.
Well, he threw the last one down, but she caught all those first ones.
I'm thinking she's going to upstage Brie Larson in her own movie.
She will.
It's going to be interesting here, A couple things that I want to touch on. I wonder if, Carlos, she felt close to Wanda, because when she was in the Hex the first time, that she was able to process Wanda's grief. And then when she comes out of it, maybe that's why she felt like she understood Wanda and wanted to protect her. That's kind of like how I made sense of that, like why she fought for Wanda. But I thought I didn't buy really how close she is with Wanda at the end, because I was hoping she was going to fight with her, for her, and a sister more. And so I do believe, just like you said, they didn't know what to do with her in those last few episodes, and that then the sole purpose did become to set up Captain Marvel 2.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a nice bridge, and I like seeing the Skrulls. Like they've popped up a few times now. I'm a big fan of the Skrulls. We've got Secret Invasion on the horizon. We've got Captain Marvel 2, maybe a Sword show at some point down the road. I think the Skrulls are going to play a more integral part in Phase 4, Phase 5 as we build into some of this than maybe some of us are expecting. And I think Captain Marvel 2 threw me a bit, because I expected the Skrulls to be the villains of a story, and we might get that with Secret Invasion down the road, but at this point they're more ally than foe, which I'm intrigued by that. But yeah, I think Monica's the end of it, or at least last 2 episodes, it's more, let's show off a bit of her power set, let's get her to that point where we can go almost full get in your suit and let's go in Captain Marvel 2. And I'm okay with that. I think they have to do some of that groundwork and all. We see it in a lot of movies. We've seen it for almost every movie in the MCU. They lay groundwork for things that are a little askew from the story at hand. It's the focal point of it. And I think, to me, it's good ways to leverage the screen time that they do have. And we've got another great character in the MCU for us to watch in the future.
No doubt about that.
Now, this whole show came to a very interesting crescendo, I'll say, by episode 8 by more deeply integrating and almost retconning in a way Wanda's power set to being magic, to being something that we are a little familiar with Doctor Strange, and it's closely associated with that character, but we haven't seen it applied in this way to Monica before. And we talked in our last podcast, Carlson and I, about how we really felt that retcon does a lot for that character. And it gives her, and I think we see towards the end of this, it gives her a bit of a container to put herself in as far as controlling that power set, explaining it, and also having a direction to go with it. It's not just this kind of omnipresent power set that Bendis used in the past to just do really whatever. This gives it a direction, whether that's dark or light, we'll see. But Carlos, you've had some fun with The Witcher in the last couple of weeks, and bringing forward and bringing through this line, this narrative of a proper witch for both Agatha and Wanda. How does that momentum continue for you into this? And also the idea that Agatha herself is really the villain of this. You know, they needed someone to oppose that. They had the magic battle, but how did all of that land coming off of last week's reveal for you?
Man, for me, like it comes down to the most important thing. A over E. Agatha over every other fan theory. So, like I said on our episode, man, I'm super happy that they just went with making Wanda a full-out witch and really establishing a new facet of the magical side of the MCU.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a lot of players in that side, right? And this way you'll have Doctor Strange having his own unique allies and adversaries. And I think it gives her a little more agency and a little more freedom as opposed to just dumping her in the mutant side of things. And like I said, her as a mutant based on her power set is always kind of weird, right? Like I like my mutants to be a extension of naturally occurring phenomenon. It can be fantastical, sure, but like hex powers and things of that nature, no. So to take her this route, amazing. So yeah, I'm all for it. And I think with where they're going with stuff with the Darkhold and whatnot, like it can factor into laying the groundwork for Blade. It can play out in any number of things. So yeah, and she's pretty fierce by the end of it. Like that shot of her in Bruce Banner's cabin in British Columbia or wherever that was, she looked badass, man. And so it'll be cool to see where they take her. But if I'm gonna applaud any kind of superhero-y stuff that they did in this show, it's that head and shoulders above everything else was to just strip away all the nonsense over her 50, 60 years around and just give us, I'd argue, the coolest version of the character thus far.
Yeah. I love what they did there. Zeddy, Agatha Harkness, the witching, all this, her as a villain for this. We were searching for a big bad for a long time. And I personally was convinced that Wanda was going to be the villain of her own story. But Agatha does take a bit of a turn here and is looking for more of that personal use for the magic. And we get some really cool witching battles. I don't know if that's what we want to call them. And a lot of it in this. And I can tell you honestly, when they're fighting and I'm seeing Wanda's hand go black, I'm like, I'm having some moments here. I'm like, oh, I don't want her to lose her power set and walk out of the show with no powers. Like, what are they doing? How did all that work for you?
I thought it worked great because I mean I always, you know me, I always like to throw the DC comparison because I love to do that. Because I remember originally when we did our first episode, I was like, this is per chance to dream. Like somebody's pulling the strings here, somebody's making her do this. Now I'm thinking this is like Flashpoint, and Agatha's like Reverse Flash because it's like she really wanted to let Wanda know that she really is the villain of the story here, essentially. So I just dug that it was essentially just a story about more power and just the amount of consumption of it, because that's what she was after, right? Because my whole thing is, and I don't know if I'm the only one, if this is a crazy theory, it is, so be it. But I love that when they showed Wanda's like beam of energy just come out and she's creating like Westview, I kind of took that's her like calling out all these other forces maybe in the process, because they never really explained how Agatha got there, at least how I took it. I just took it that when Wanda created Westview, she opened up this whole other like world of like beings that could pop up there. So I didn't think it was out of the realm of possibility that Agatha was just somebody that saw power and she sensed it and she wanted it. So that's, I don't know if I'm alone in that but
it's an awakening.
Yeah.
Sure.
Or she was like a beacon, right?
Mhm.
Yeah.
I think Agatha at some point in time just kind of says like she sensed that witching power or whatever, right? And
That's
she
right.
seems to be a bit of a vampire for that stuff based on what she did to her coven. So
yeah, it's something that, and I agree with you, Zeddy, that the concept of Agatha, and I think Catherine Hahn kills it too. It works. It all works for me in this, and they kind of put her on the back burner too, right? Like maybe we'll come back to you later when we have a big Doctor Strange Wanda crossover thing, and you know, maybe Multiverse Madness. Who knows? They definitely didn't kill the character off, and I like the way that they put her to bed. Now, Crusoe boys, let's open this up a bit, and we'll open up the whole floor too, because you know Zeddy and Carlos have nicely frame this out for us to talk a bit more about Wanda herself and the transition from Wanda to the Scarlet Witch, and them actually putting to screen a Scarlet Witch, I will say, with the little crown. It worked. It worked for me. Did it work for you guys seeing her embrace that side of her? And as we'll talk about maybe in a few minutes here, is this a Jekyll Hyde thing? Is this a Wanda Scarlet Witch, or is she the Scarlet Witch as she exits WandaVision here?
Well, I'm gonna let you tackle that because we talked about this, but she looks spectacular. They nailed it 100%.
Perfect delivery there.
With
she looks spectacular. That's perfect delivery.
I mean, unbelievably. Like
perfect.
I didn't know how they were gonna pull it off. You know, because we saw her with the Halloween costume or whatnot, but the costume department. You know, really the CGI, everything was top notch in the show. I can't really nitpick about anything, but I want to throw this to you because we had talked at length about on the phone from your job about Wanda.
That's amazing.
Is the witch?
I was on the phone for 20.
Is the witch a separate entity or is it Wanda? So you go there because we talked a long time.
Yeah. So if Kristen Kamala is watching this, I was working. I swear, I was just also talking to him at the same time for 25 minutes. It was technically lunch, but my lunch was on me. Anyway, so two parts to that. One, the suit reveal was incredible, and it's up there with me in terms of how I felt for the Aquaman one. Other suit reveals are amazing, but just the way those scenes play out and the like final stamp that they give, the Aquaman one and now Scarlet Witch is up there for me just because how it looked. Because I didn't expect them to go that way. No, I did not expect them to go that way, and it works. It works. It looks fantastic. I have like 3 screenshots, not in a weird way, but I'm like, wow, it works. Don't laugh, Zednik. But for me, I'm with you, Tim. It was my belief it's Jekyll and Hyde. I feel like the end credit was she's trying to live her life, and that entity is doing that.
Yeah.
And the whole conflict of Doctor Strange too, because I don't believe the MCU has done some great character work, and there's times when there's characters where I go, why did you let them go that way? Like my biggest example, and people may disagree, and that's okay. I think Thor had an incredible arc, and Infinity War, he's my favorite character. He's my favorite thing. That whole
his movie, him and Thanos.
It's his movie. And then the Endgame stuff, I was always like, I get what you're trying to do, but I don't believe Feige's going to make her full-on villain. I don't think so, because I think the reception she got, they're looking to make her more of the face. I think Feige really looks at the audience, and I think he sees, our plan was maybe Larson, but people seem to like Olsen more, and people might like Rambeau more, so let's shape it around. Let's put her in Captain Marvel. So I think it's going to be the Scarlet Witch is the villain, and it's Wanda's battle to fix that, and Strange has to help, and Strange is going to end up being the guy who's going to help her
Will he show up in his own movie?
Close the portal. Stop that. Etc. So I'm with you. I think it's a Jekyll and Hyde thing, which could be cool because it makes it more complex, right? It's not just like Wanda has new powers and now she's throwing a tantrum again and now there's a bad thing. It's more interesting if there's this internal battle, because even she says to Monica at the end that she can't control it, but she's going to learn. I think we're going to see the biggest learning curve in the MCU, and
she's reading a bad book.
And she is reading a bad book.
It's not a good book, Carlos.
No, that book is bad.
Put that book down. If you see that book at your house,
just like Dr. Seuss.
Don't open it.
I will not open it.
Do not open. We got to call the doctor.
Well, and I'm right there with you. I think that putting the bounds on her power set, like I was saying before, through this Jekyll Hyde thing, I think it makes for the character to be a whole heck of a lot more compelling. And the idea of chaos magic and all that, I think it's cool to explain the past, but I want a more focused Wanda going forward, and I think that's what they're going to give us. And it's very intriguing to see where this character is going to go. I always thought she was going to exit as a Scarlet Witch and as the villain of the Multiverse of Madness. Who knows what we're going to get with her? And it was very explicit. Feige was said right there, she's in the Multiverse of Madness. WandaVision leads into the Multiverse of Madness. And so we're all trying to make these bridges here. But I think we're in for quite a ride with Wanda going forward in the MCU. Now, Zeddy, Carlos, does this character get pulled off like this in the absence of Elizabeth Olsen?
Ooh, no, probably not. Like, she did a spectacular job, and even just the transitions episode to episode with the different styles of acting and the different tropes for how women were portrayed in those eras and whatnot. I think there's very few actresses that could do it that well. You couldn't put Brie Larson in the first 6 episodes of WandaVision, I don't think.
No, it's very hard. I think Elizabeth Olsen, you boys, the V39 are going through Golden Globes and all this over at Let's Go. Zeddy, is this someone you're putting in there for next year's award season?
Look, the other 2 Olsen sisters might have stole your heart in Full House, but Lizzie Olsen completely blows me away in WandaVision. No question. She is Emmy-winning Elizabeth Olsen. The Globes need to do the right thing and just give it to her now. Just mail it to her house. It's hers. All right, just do the right thing. Yeah, just do it. What she was tasked to do with this series. How can you not walk away from seeing this show and not want to give her the utmost praise? She should not have been able to pull this off. She really should not have, and she did it impeccably. So, yeah.
You know what? To be honest with you, I'd argue at times the end Wanda we see in this, not Scarlet Witch, but the end Wanda is maybe even the weakest of all the Wandas. To be honest with you, from an acting perspective, everything she does, that in between moment, that transition moment, I find that is where she is at her weakest, and that's not a slight at all. Her weak is everyone else's strength, right?
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to what they do with this character going forward. There's so much in here, guys, and we've walked through, I would say, most of the highlights here. But let's go around the table one more time before we take maybe a couple minutes to talk about what's next in the MCU, what we're anticipating here. So I'm going to throw it to you first, Carlos, man. Final thoughts on WandaVision, and if there's anything we didn't touch on that you want to throw at the guys here, let's do it.
Final thoughts. You know what? If we're doing the round table, I think we throw our ratings in this section of it too. So, yeah, man, we went through a journey with this show, and episode 8, it made me a believer. I could take or leave a lot of the stuff that we had leading into it, but that 8th episode is some of the strongest stuff that we've ever seen in the MCU, or just in superhero programming, period, full stop kind of thing. So yeah, man, this show, it's going to be a solid, B plus, A minus for me, using our rating system. And it's a let's go under your rating system, but that
Nice.
episode 8, it's a gotta go.
Mhm.
Like I would recommend, like even as a standalone episode, I think it almost works. Like you could plunk anybody down in front of it who's familiar with the characters to some extent and be like, yeah, this is the bad lady and we're going to walk through Wanda's origin and off you go kind of thing. And Eric, she wasn't that good in Room. There's better actresses that could have won that award that year. So there's that.
Eric's playing the antagonist in the comment section tonight.
He's gonna do his own podcast, isn't he? The Captain Marvel podcast, hopefully.
I know. I'm positive that he's sitting on the other side of this because every comment I make, he's got some witticism. He's wearing his penguin costume from the Iceberg Lounge.
Here he is. Yeah.
He's coming after me.
The Batman is coming, Carlos.
we're
The Batman
building
is coming in a year. Maybe.
That's right, baby.
The thing I do love about this is that we're building our own podcast connected universe.
There we are.
The ins and outs. The ins
But we're
and
doing
outs.
it the right way. We're not rushing it. You know?
Zeddy, man, I'm gonna toss it to
Wow.
you. So in the nerd room, we do a bit of letter grades, but feel free to letter grade it and then also throw the let's go ratings in there. And then give me your final thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I'm gonna give this thing like an A-, which for me, I guess I'd have to give this a gotta go, just because it was the perfect storm for me, coming hot off of like The Mandalorian. I'm back in the MCU. I'm ready to see what's coming. I loved how mystical it was. I loved the mystery behind everything. The performances were just heartwarming. It kept me wanting to stay up till 2 a.m. almost every Friday, which is almost impossible for me, especially being a young guy, you know. But I was just into it every week, and what I'm looking forward to now, because it
Hard
sets
for
it up
me.
beautifully, guys.
Too easy for you.
Right here, baby. Right here, baby. It is coming,
Go.
baby.
There
It
you
is
go.
here. Falcon and Winter Soldier. I couldn't be more hype. Let's do it. Let's go, baby.
I love it. Zeddy bringing the hype for my dude Cap, Falcon, Winter Soldier. Bring it on. But let's wrap this up. Crusoe boys, let's hear some of your ratings and your final thoughts on.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to talk about Elizabeth Olsen, when you the highest compliment I could pay to her is that I can't picture anybody else in the role. You know, so that's like the best thing you could say. The show, it's been a long time since maybe, I mean, I would like to say Game of Thrones. I guess Game of Thrones lost that I was so riveted week to week. And I'm going to miss that because as much as I think I'm going to enjoy Falcon and Winter Soldier, I don't think it's going to reach that level. All the nuances, the mysteries, hard to top this, man. It was great. It's a solid A for me. I look beyond all the periphery stuff that I didn't like. It didn't affect the main core story that they hit a home run with. And I would give it a let's go for sure. I mean, I'm going to miss it. I really am. And we know we're not going to see her till the end of the year, possibly in Spider-Man 3. It's probably the most thing I'm eager to see is her continued journey.
It's huge. It's huge. Nico, man.
It's a GG, baby. GG. It's gotta go. Letter grade.
It is a Golden Globe.
It's an A, and you're darn right, Zach. We'll talk about that soon. Letter grade A, number 9. I say that because I still have the utmost respect that they told a story that they wanted to, the way they wanted to from start to finish. And man, they gave these two characters a level of depth that, I mean, I can count on a few fingers other people in what other characters in the MCU have that kind of depth. And we got it in this really cool 8-week span.
Yeah.
And we filled in her gaps, justified some stuff, and then put her in a really interesting place to move forward. And just the writing. I mean, they have now given me some of my favorite lines in the MCU, especially with, you know, what is grief but love, persevering.
Almost in film period.
Almost right. Absolutely. So the way I was moved, and when I did, full transparency, I did cry at the end because when they're walking back to the house, I'm like, she's going to give them all up. They're going to die per se. And I cried when Robert Downey Jr. hung it up as Iron Man. I cried when Iron Man died because I knew he was going to be done, and that was a really cool arc, and that was a great sacrifice for his character. I cried at the end of WandaVision because I did not want to let them go. I did not want to let the show go, and that's how I know I really like something. it made Wanda probably the most interesting character at the MCU in the moment, and one of my favorites going forward all time. She's right up there with like Evans's Cap for me. Like she's in that top god tier. And if she doesn't get an Emmy, SAG, and Golden Globe nomination, I will set the Hollywood Foreign Press Academy and not Academy. I'll set it on fire. I'll set it on fire.
Like that? How are you gonna do it?
Like phew, like how she does when she fights Agatha. Yeah, no, it's great. I love it. It's top 10 MCU content for me at the moment because now it's content. It's not just films. It's technically content now.
Yeah.
You got shows, TV, films, you got animated. It's
canon.
Top 10 MCU.
Don't let Martin Scorsese hear you calling it content.
Marty, no,
Marty. I will fight Marty. I love him, but he needs to respect this stuff.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo all those thoughts, guys. I can't add too much more to what you guys are saying. I'm an A for this. It's a let's go for me. It's got to go. I came into this on fire. That first episode, you can go back to our live stream with the boys.
Oh man, it's hype.
Yeah,
it's hype.
Like, I'm on literal fire, and I felt that the work they did throughout this justified my enthusiasm for that. It was about the big payoff for me. I knew going into this that those first 3 episodes, they're a bit slower paced, but I was anticipating the payoff, and they delivered for me on every level. And the thoughts that you guys had about Vision and Wanda in particular, what they do with these characters, where they put them, they gave us an exciting, an extensive, and an in-depth emotional journey with these characters, but then also place them in places where we're excited for the next steps. That's hard to do without stellar writing and attention to detail. And the fact that they did this in this weird, askew sitcom, black and white transitioning and complex narrative, like hats off to them. That's why it's getting an A from me. It does everything I needed to do. It filled that void in the MCU for me as well. Like I've been clamoring for this stuff for like over 600 days. And now I've got it weekly, or I had it weekly, and to deliver something to this extent. And I also have to pass on the comments to my wife. She's a big fan of the MCU, but isn't in the same space as we are. She doesn't come at this thing yelling and screaming every single week like I do. But she loved this beginning to end.
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's awesome.
And she wanted more. You know, she had similar thoughts to Superman and Lois too. And so I take that, and Carlos mentioned this on our podcast, that as kind of the real litmus test for something like this. Is someone can come at this from the relative periphery and enjoy it, consume it, love it, ask the same questions that we're asking. It's a real success. So this works for a broad audience. This works for super fans. This works for everyone. So it's something special, and I'm looking forward to what's next. You know, Zeddy, you teased it. Let's talk about some hype. Falcon and Winter Soldier. We've got a couple of weeks. What is it? 2 weeks? We got 1 off week, and then we're back into the episodic MCU. Like Zeddy, man, where's your hype level at for Falcon and Winter Soldier?
Can it be higher than my ceiling?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. Can be whatever you want.
Yeah.
No.
This Cap, baby. Let's go. It's Captain America, baby. Cap is back. Chris Evans might be there. He may not. Let's do this, baby.
Yeah.
That shield. I missed that shield, man. I missed that shield. Let's go.
Let's go. Carlos, man, is there a special story here in Falcon and the Winter Soldier is going to be told?
Oh, man, definitely. First off, Eric, love you, baby. I just, you contribute a lot to the chat tonight, and it was awesome.
Oh,
but
Eric, you're fine.
Oh yeah, come on, Eric. We're just joking, man. Just as much as you. I got a
good,
taste of your humor the other day on Twitter, and now I understand it.
Yeah, all good, baby. All
Drink it
good.
again.
I'm just not logged into the chat.
Are you sauced, bro? Are you sauced? Come on.
Yeah, I wasn't logged into the chat, and I was like, if I hit this button, will it kick me out of the live stream? I don't know. So I didn't want to take the risk. But yeah, as far as Falcon and the Winter Soldier, man, my hype level is off the charts. Like, I'm super looking forward to where they go with Zemo, because I think he's one of the most compelling and interesting characters in the MCU period. Like, I just love his backstory, that he's just some guy on the ground in Sokovia, and he has this life-changing event, and he basically dismantles the Avengers completely and thoroughly over the course of like 2, 3 movies kind of thing. Like they're still dysfunctional because of the things that he put into place. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to seeing that. And this summer, man, when you guys dubbed me I went from being the goddamn Batman to being the goddamn Falcon when I had to take over for you for a couple weeks. Like, I don't know what happened, but man, I have a insane love of Anthony Mackie as the Falcon now.
Yeah.
And yeah, dude, I can't wait to see where they take this character. And it sounds like they're gonna play with some pretty bold material over the course of this story, and I can't wait for it, man. I can't wait for Kevin Feige and the MCU to take some big swings and make some big statements. And dude, it's gonna be awesome. And like for a dude like me who grew up loving superheroes his whole life, to see Person of Color is like front and center and headlining the show, that's huge. So yeah man.
I think with Falcon and Winter Soldier, where we might not get, and we probably will, but maybe not the same emotional depth in the addressing of grief and what that can do. I think there's an avenue of social commentary that show can and will provide for the MCU and for a much broader audience. I think, if anyone read Nick Spencer stuff with Sam Wilson Cap and all that, and some of the commentary with Ta-Nehisi Coates and what he did in some of those books, that there's some real powerful stories to be told in that Captain America world, while sticking with that high octane Captain America stories that we have seen in Civil War, Winter Soldier, and going back to that sort of contained universe. I'm really excited for that. Crucial Boys, last thoughts. Excitement for Winter Soldier.
Yeah, I think that you're right. It's going to be socially relevant. I think the action is going to be top notch. I mean, it looks, whatever we've seen, it looks fantastic. But the only parallel that I will compare it to WandaVision is that I think we're going to see these two characters developed similar.
That's my goal.
To what Wanda and Vision were. And they are two great characters that, again, have been underutilized in the MCU. And that's what I'm most looking forward to. I know it's going to look great. It's going to sound great. And it's going to touch on some things that are going to really hit home. But to see Bucky and Sam develop at the level that Wanda and Vision did, I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Like, I'm so excited for when they resurrect Superman, and then when Darkseid comes, man, it's going to be crazy. And I just...
It's funny that you say that, man, because
what are we talking about? Hold on.
A small piece of my anticipation for Falcon and the Winter Soldier.
What are we talking about? I was caught in a moment. Are we not talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League?
It's like Bono said.
Are we not talking about Zack Snyder's Justice League?
That is coming. That is
Darkseid's coming.
Yeah, right.
Somebody get the time stone and we wind over here. We wind.
Guys, we gotta
run it back. Run it back.
We gotta unite the seven. No, I'm kidding. Where's
kidding.
the comments?
That's
Where's
what we're most
Holzman in the
excited
comments? Okay, no, he's fine. Where's Holzman in the comments?
Comments?
No, I'm more excited for it. For like my dad just said, where they could bring Sam and Bucky now. I don't know if they'll do it to the same extent that they did for Wanda and Vision for me, but I think they're going to do it more, because Wanda and Vision even had a little more towards the end there than Bucky and Sam did. They're sort of Infinity War and Endgame. They're sort of just there. Whereas in Infinity War, like Wanda and Vision had a little more of their, like, Wanda had to like kill him and whatnot. I'm pumped for Zemo. I'm with you, Carlos. And now that he's gonna wear the mask and everything, I'm so hyped.
Yeah.
I'm very much down for it. And the action looks next level. And I like the buddy cop thing that they're trying to do. I've always been fascinated by their relationship has always been very entertaining to me. I like it in Civil War a lot, so I'm very hyped for it. What did you just grab? Oh, Zemo. Zemo. He just wants to grab Zemo.
I got my Zemo.
That's
I hope
awesome.
he wears.
He's going to look similar,
power.
I think.
But no,
He's moving. He's moving closer to the shelf now in a couple of weeks. So
beauty.
I'm very hyped. It's only 6 though, so it's even though they're going to be longer, it's still going to be like we had that 8-week hype. Now it's going to be shorter, but.
But the production value on this one looks like basically a big screen movie that's been chopped into.
Looks like James Bond, right? looked like a spy thriller, looked like anything that. Right?
I've been saying this for a long time that Feige said, or Iger came down and said, Feige, I need some shows. And he said, well, I have this Falcon Winter Soldier movie that we're going to do. We can put this into a show if you want.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And it's funny, like, Nico, you were joking about that. But like, well, let's face it, none of those guys listen to our show anyways. But like a big piece of my hype for Falcon and the Winter Soldier is that it's like Sam coming down on that guy at the end of Endgame where he's just stabbing the heart with the wings. Because that's what this show is going to do to this malarkey that is Zack Snyder's Justice League, man.
You mean the greatest comic book film of all time?
It sure as hell better be.
I'm going to be Sam. Get in there.
It may be the greatest trilogy.
No
it's
comment.
gonna be something. And you know what, guys? There's some discussions to be had on that one for sure.
I can't wait.
And I think the what did I call it? The podcast connected universe, whatever it is. There's definitely going to be some discussions over the next couple of weeks as we build into
PCU,
Zack Snyder's Justice League, the DC extended universe, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Look,
it's great.
Call it whatever you want to call it. We've got a lot coming down. We've just ended, arguably one of the best superhero shows ever put to screen. We've got another one coming, and we've got a 4-hour-long movie, and then we've also got Superman and Lois.
Yeah,
we've got the comic books. We've got everything coming at us. Not to mention Godzilla vs. Kong, Loki, Black Widow. Like, come on, like guys, what kind of world are we living in right now? It's a beautiful world. It's a beautiful time to be podcasters. It's a beautiful time to be fans.
It's the golden age. I say it.
It's brilliant, and
the age of heroes.
It's that, yeah.
It's the age of podcasters.
But gentlemen, I'd like to thank you guys on behalf of myself and Carlos very much for joining us tonight to discuss the season finale of WandaVision. I love that we're able to complete this journey full circle with you guys, and we look forward to taking those next big steps in the MCU, DCEU, wherever. We're going to be attached to the hip going forward here. We've had a lot of fun discussing tonight, but I'd like to give you guys an opportunity for those that are listening on the podcast feed, for those that are listening elsewhere after the live stream. Let them know where they can find you guys every single week and your social handles and everything you guys are up to.
Go ahead.
Why am I so much pressure? You can follow me here. I got it right this time. I used the right hand. I got it here on Twitter, Instagram, and somebody else's favorite letterbox because everyone's favorite is Zeddy's. We all know that. You can follow our show, us three, at the Vigilante 1939 on Twitter. He's wearing a shirt, so is Carlos, my man's right there. And then so we do shows every week, just like these guys. They all except us. Except us. That's so
you don't buy your own material.
You shouldn't. You can find us there. I also do film and TV reviews for the Let's Go Podcast. That's at the Let's Go Podcast, or go to theletsgopodcast.com. And I have a couple other shows with some friends as well, but I won't waste too much time. Dad, they can find you here.
You can follow me there. I just follow everybody.
He just likes to talk.
I'm on my vigilante show. We have something coming up, but we'll talk about that.
That'll be later,
and then we'll make an announcement.
So stay tuned.
Cliffhanger.
That comes later.
Cliffhanger. Just like
Cliffhanger.
Cliffhanger.
Zeddy, man, where can everyone find you, and what else have you been up to lately?
Oh man, I'm not gonna leave everybody on a cliffhanger. I'll tell you where you can find me. So you can find me at PapaZ_95. I am literally everywhere. I'm on Let's Go Marquee.
You are
the
literally
official movie and TV show that I co-host with Nico. You can find me talking about movie trailers with Emmett Davis called The Hitch.
The Big Grizz.
You can also find me on this bad boy right here, where I spearhead this ship that sometimes always goes sideways, Vigilante 1939. It's always a great time. We got so many things in the pipeline. And guys, I gotta say, I know we've done this 3 times, and I know they say that you should sometimes stop after a trilogy, but when the quality is so good,
You're right.
Why stop now?
I know, man. Like we might have hangers, but we pay them off in the future.
We always pay them off, baby.
You always pay them off, baby.
There's nothing to restore because we're going strong.
We're going strong. We don't go back in the past.
We are inevitable, baby.
That's right.
It all comes back.
Man, the references are off the chain right now.
Did you see our one guy, Ian, how he did the shirt? That was so cool.
Oh yeah, Ian. Yeah, big
Wow.
shout
Yeah,
out.
He is
nerd
the man.
Big shout out to
Dude,
Ian.
I
That was so
literally
awesome, man.
love Ian. Where
That's
is he? I
awesome
love
stuff.
Ian.
Ian's the best. Yeah, big shout out to everyone in the comments. I know we didn't get
Yeah.
to too much here. We had a lot to get through. So yeah, big shout out to Ian, Eric, everyone who's out there.
Shout
Emmett, I know you're in the chat there. Our boy Chris Evans, the real Chris Evans in the chat as well.
His ass.
Big
America's
shout out to everyone here. My wife's been texting me. So big shout out to my wife. She's been texting me all her
Yeah,
thoughts
shout
on
out.
Shout out.
that as we go. So
That's a lucky
absolute
woman.
blast,
Lucky
guys.
woman.
And for us, myself and Carlos, you can find everything we do over the nerdroom.net. You can follow myself and Carlos. It's at the end of the show. You'll get it as I drop this into the feed. And Twitter is the place really where we do a lot of hanging out. And we do a lot of discussion, have a lot of fun discussion, and a lot of discourse around the stuff that we love and keeping it positive. So, guys, thank you again so much for joining us. WandaVision is in the review. We got a lot to look forward to. And until next live stream, until next episode, thank you guys very much for entering the Nerd Room.
I can do this all day. I'm gonna get that in there.